Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. That's almost 4 years of finding each other every day, sharing Torah, sharing love, sharing support, comfort, and community. It's been a blessing to be part of this growing community from all over the world for the last almost 4 years. We were born in response to the isolation of COVID. We have struggled and soared together as a community from all over the world, mostly by just saying good morning and showing up. So, Penny, good morning, good to see you. Linda and Sharon, Jacqueline, Anna, Ashley, and Arlene, Boker Tov, Chag Urim Sameach, a happy Hanukkah to you. Carl and Joy, Helen sending love to Arizona. Penny, it is broadcast 946. Happy Hanukkah to you too. Deborah sending love to Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Cecile. Hope you are well. Robin and Helen, Patricia, Boker Tov. Patricia, your friend Beth is in need of our prayers. We are praying for her. Sylvia and Amy, Natalia and Natalie, good morning. Hi, Stan. Hi, Deborah. Good to see you. Judy and Masiak. Hi, Deborah. All right, friends. Let's get started. Let's take a breath. Let's sing a blessing, learn some Torah, and get ready for a good day. Ron, good to see you. Hi, Debbie. Good morning, everyone, and happy Hanukkah. I hope you and yours are safe and well, and while I've said that many times over the last almost 4 years of our daily broadcast, I mean it differently these days, and I'm sure you understand when I say, I hope that you and yours are safe and well, praying for each other's welfare. That becomes more urgent and more serious these days. So thank you, friends. It is good to be part of a community that really wishes each other well in the context of a real world where things are not simple. The power of Hanukkah to banish darkness is a real tool these days. And so I want to stand firmly in our world in this moment so that the comfort and light that we bring is based in reality. So let's see who's here, and let's talk about some of the things that are coming up for us. Natalie, I'm going to read your question out loud so that we can talk about it, and I'll use it as a pivot to talk about Hanukkah too. So you write, Rabbi, I had a very long conversation with a good friend. Very difficult to know how to explain the huge numbers of displaced Palestinians. Clearly, we discussed, but the United States, the only one to say no to the ceasefire. So some of you might have seen I was on TV this last Sunday. It was a conversation that I had on CBS New York with the mayor-elect of New Rochelle, a dear friend, Yadira Ramos Herbert. And what I want to say in response to your question is that, number one, there's no easy answer to this. It's a terrible reality that we face. Hanukkah's language actually is helpful here because we sing, especially in Israel, Banu choshech legaresh. We came to banish the darkness. Why would we need to sing such a thing if it weren't so dark? And darkness is um, is a real world way of seeing complicated situations. And I don't mean to gloss over the absolutely dire circumstance in Gaza, but there are a few different things that we need to hold on to. Number one, we aren't geopoliticians, and social media rarely gives us a chance to have real conversations. So I'm glad, Natalie, that you and your friend actually spoke. The history of Hanukkah is just as dark, actually, as the moment in Gaza. You know that the first Hanukkah was celebrated, the rededication of the temple, mid war? It's so important to understand that the assaults on Jewish dignity and practice were ongoing, and the Maccabees, led by Judah and Matityahu, lit that first menorah anyway. That tells us that circumstances are never clear cut, and the situations that we face are never simple, and we light anyway. That's not an answer to your question nor your friend's question, but the untold numbers of displaced Palestinians in Gaza is an absolute human crisis. The question is, would that have been avoidable, and what can we do now? Again, I'm not answering as a geopolitician or as a military strategist, but it's important to understand that had Hamas chosen to release the hostages, there would have been no ground invasion to this extent. Even though one of the goals of the war, a legitimate and moral goal of the war, is to dismantle Hamas. And so here we are understanding, as much as we can, the facts on the ground. And I know this sounds like a talking point, but it is desperately true. If Hamas laid down its weapons, there would be peace. And if Israel laid down its weapons, there would be no Israel. And so the challenge here, friends, is to understand that the moral consequences that we are facing are all on Hamas. How could Israel not respond to the worst pogrom in Israeli history? And that language is blasphemous. Blasphemous. Israel was founded so that there would be no such thing as a pogrom again. My children weren't supposed to know the word from their current reality. They were supposed to study it in history. Self-determination and Jewish dignity and safety were the goals of founding the State of Israel. The birth of Zionism is actually biblical. The idea that we are attached to a land is very, very ancient. But the political movement that we now call Zionism is absolutely tinged with the moral impulses that are the best of Judaism that we cultivated during a diaspora. And now that's a really important point to bring up on this fifth day of Hanukkah. Because the place of the diaspora could be summed up by my dear friend Yossi Klein Halevi, an author and speaker that I'm sure many of us have had the chance to learn from. And if you haven't, I encourage you to look him up. Everything he says is worth hearing. And he's just a compassionate, loving, erudite person. In 2014, I was leading a group of progressive rabbis from the United States to Israel. And we landed in the summer of 2014 just as rockets started flying from Gaza. And it was shocking. Had they started hours earlier, we might have had to cancel the trip, but we landed, the rockets were flying, and we had a different kind of trip. This was the summer of 2014. Operation Cast Lead came right after this. And I remember sitting with Yossi, who was our first speaker, and he was talking about the need for diaspora. And he's written a lot about this. But he said something those days that I will never, ever forget. He said, we need the diaspora because here in Israel, we live under existential threat on a daily basis, and we can't think in the long term. Now, I don't know that that's quite true, but as an exaggerated caricature, or at least a categorical way of understanding what it is to be proximate to those who would kill you, and there isn't a nicer way to say that, every day is an urgent response, and it's a short-term response at best, often because of the shifting sands in the Middle East. In the diaspora, he said, because of the physical distance between you and the threat, you can think more in the long term. Now, yes, since 2014, America has undergone enormous, enormous struggle and tribulation when it comes to how America responds to anti Semitism. Given that the ADL said just yesterday that anti Semitism has spiked in the United States 37% since October 7th. And we know this because of the congressional hearings. We know this because of our children on college campuses. We know this because of the politics of this moment and the mainstreaming of hatred that did not begin on October 7th, but has been an undercurrent in American life. We dreamt of coming to this place. Our ancestors did. My ancestors did. And when I moved to Boston as a newly ordained rabbi, I remember hearing stories of physical violence and anti-Semitism in the old country outside Boston, in Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury. And I was living in a different moment where that sounded strange. Well, now, friends, now, it's important to understand that Hanukkah's language actually feels incredibly relevant again. So here's what I want to do in the next moment and just share a drop of Torah as I understand it. The fifth night of Hanukkah is a big shift. Why? Because we light for 8 nights. The fifth night of Hanukkah is the first night that there is more light than empty candle holders. It's the first time that the majority of the space that we assign for the holiday is filled with light. It's when we tip the balance toward light and hope. When we say not just Banu Choshech Legaresh, we have come to banish the darkness, we actually succeed in this deeply important ritual way. I won't call it symbolic because I think it's very real. We create more and more light, and the fifth night of Hanukkah, it becomes the dominant experience. Our ancestors lit these candles during moments that were terrible too. There are stories from the Shoah of lighting candles in the camps. There are stories of conversos, hidden Jews in Spain during the Inquisition, where people lit candles in hiding. And even in the Talmud, the rabbis have a conversation about it's a mandate to do Pirsum Dinisa, to put the menorah, the Chanukiah, in the window. But what if it's an environment that feels unsafe? Are you allowed to light it indoors? The answer is yes, but I want to point to the question. It's not a nice part of our history. It's not a cheerful thing to say, but what I'm trying to take comfort in as I share it out loud with you is that we have been through tribulations before, and we are in a different moment of Jewish history, because despite the horror, the blasphemy of October 7th, the violation of Jewish dignity and self-determination, the violation of our lives in permutations that I don't need to rename or amplify for you, that in the context of that and in the interweaving way that American Jewry, global Jewry, is finally waking up to our interconnectedness. Israelis are feeling so grateful that American Jews are showing up with robust allyship and love and family. We have been here before, but we have never been here like this before. We have a voice in American democracy. We have a voice in Jewish history and in world history. We have a voice. And the way we show up these days is going to be either the fifth night of Hanukkah, more light because we demand it, or not. And I don't think we have a choice these days. For the sakes of our descendants and for the sakes of this moment, and in America, for the sake of this democracy, and for Israel, for the sake of survival, we show up. And so when someone asks a question, Natalie, as your friend did, first of all, what a gift it is to have a real conversation with a real friend, not online, a real conversation where someone says, how do you deal with this? I was asked this on CBS on Sunday. When will this end, Rabbi? I was asked. So I gave the important framing that I'm not a geopolitician and I'm not a military expert, but I talked about the pain that any person of conscience has when innocent civilians are killed. It is too much to bear, and the moral urgency of this fight is also very clear. The Maccabees had to fight. They couldn't have a sit-in at the Beit HaMikdash and say, stop killing us. Didn't work. They had to fight. Now, if you know your history, you know that it didn't last because physical violence and war is not a sustainable reality in the world. It's important for us to remember that the real goal of Chanukah is to build a world together where everyone benefits from the light. My light is not diminished when I share it. That is one of the messages of a Chanukiah. The shamash lights the other candles and is just as bright. That's the goal of peace. That's the goal of a world that can work together. It's really important for us not to let that go. Yes, we fight when we must, but we do not like it. This war has been forced upon us, and we will win. I don't know what winning a war looks like, really, because the devastation in Israel and in Gaza, all a stain on the inhumanity of Hamas. I don't know what winning looks like, but I do know that the mandate to fight is moral. The mandate to bring family home is moral. And assaulting and massacring families and committing untold inhuman war crimes against women and children and Holocaust survivors, that is immoral. There are times where we need to be able to identify the gray and not to say right, wrong, good, bad, hero, villain. But in this moment, we are living a story where it is clear that there is a villain. I struggle with this. I asked a dear friend recently, is it possible, are we that powerful as human beings that we can erase the image of God from our souls? And he looked at me, this is Rabbi Penny Dunner in LA, a dear friend and teacher, and he said, yes, we call that a rasha, someone who is bad, an evil person. Terrorism is evil. It's just that simple. We are going to have to fight this fight, both on the ground with our children, young Israelis, most Jewish, but also including Muslims and Arabs and Druze who serve in Israel's defense forces, women and men, gay and straight. We are one united people, and we are called to fight the fight for our safety. But we should make sure to never relish it. We are fighting because we must, but what we'd rather do is light lights, share a blessing. I shared last night a reflection on just the number 5, and with this I'll close. 5 stands for the 5 books of the Torah. So this is the 5th day of Chanukah. Think about what each of the books of the Torah in sequence offer us, from the genesis of our family, to the exodus from our people's pain, to the cultivation of sacred community, that's Leviticus, to navigating a wild world, that's Numbers, to the commitment to telling our story over and over again to every generation, that's Deuteronomy, and then starting the process over again. We are a people with a long history, and not all of it has been gentle. The more we tell our stories, the more rooted we are in our own history, the greater the capacity we have to face darkness when it appears and not to become dark ourselves in response. We are called to be full of light. And yes, it's fair to really struggle to find the light these days. That is fair. No one should feel judged for struggling right now. But how important it is, friends, for us to take good care of ourselves, to remember that there is light within waiting to be unleashed as a gift to the world, not as a weapon. And we fight when we must, but not because we want to. We struggle at the consequences of war. We are here to be a beacon of light, and we would put down the weapons as quickly as we could when given the chance. Please God, may we be given that chance, because the world sees that it can be a gift to itself, and it should see us as nothing less. Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people in our land. That's the dream. That's it. That's a worthy dream. Sing it with me, friends. Let's sing our way into the 5th day of Chanukah, knowing that we can be light bringers, and that's all we want to be. Kolon balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi הומייה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Chag Urim Sameach, a happy Chanukah to you and yours. Am Yisrael Chai. See you soon.